Hey guys, welcome to Anchor to Truth. Today we are diving into chapter 43 in the book of Jubilees. So let's get started.
All right, guys, let's pick it up in verse 1. And he did as Joseph had told him, and filled all their sacks for them with food, and put their money in their sacks, and put the cup in Benjamin's sack. And early in the morning they departed, and it came to pass that when they had gone from thence, Joseph said unto the steward of his house, Pursue them, run and seize them, saying, For good ye have requited me with evil, and have stolen from me the silver cup out of which my Lord drinks. And bring back to me their youngest brother, and fetch him quickly before I go forth to my seat of judgment. And he ran after them, and said unto them according to these words. And they said unto him, Elohim forbid that thy servant should do this thing, and steal from the house of thy Lord any utensil, and the money also which we found in our sacks the first time we thy servants brought back from the land of Canaan. Now then, should we steal any utensil? Behold, here are we in our sacks, searching wherever thou findest a cup in the sack of any young man amongst us. Let him be slain, and we our donkeys will serve thy Lord. And he said unto them, Not so. The man with whom I find him only shall I take as a servant, and ye will return in peace unto your house. And as he was searching in their vessels, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest, it was found in Benjamin's sack. And they rent their garments and laded their donkeys, and returned to the city, and came to the house of Joseph. And they all bowed themselves on their faces to the ground before him. And Joseph said unto them, Ye have done evil. And they said, What shall we say, and how shall we defend ourselves? Our Lord hath discovered the transgression of his servants. Behold, we are the servants of our Lord, and our donkeys also. And Joseph said unto them, I too fear Yahuwah. As for you, go ye to your homes, and let your brother be my servant, for ye have done evil. Know ye not that a man delighteth in his cup, as I with this cup, and yet ye have stolen it from me?
All right, well, who's first then? What we got?
Well, right there at the beginning, it says, and he did as Joseph had told him. Who's the he there?
This,
The
this is a servant.
right.
Got it. I think it's important to notate who that is, because otherwise, story might get a little bit funny when you're like, well, he, is that Joseph? Is that one of the sons? But
Yeah.
yeah, it makes a lot more sense for the servant for sure.
Yeah, or technically, I guess they call him the steward. That's if we go back
Mm.
to our previous chapter at the very end, it says
Yep.
Joseph devised a plan and then basically told the steward what to do, and then we pick up in 43 with the steward doing exactly as he was told.
Yep. Good catch on that, just for a little context.
Oh
Yep.
yeah, of course. And then it's interesting. Of course, they put it in Benjamin's bag. It's like after all that, after keeping one of the sons there or his brothers, finally go back and get Benjamin. You're like, you know what? I mean, we even see it in the title. It's Joseph's final test. He's like, let's just see how you act and react with all this stuff, because this is like it's kind of putting you through your paces. Really, they've now tested every part of you. What are you doing about your food? What are you doing about your family? Are you willing to leave one? Are you willing to bring the youngest? Where do you guys stand? And he's going to kind of act accordingly. And I think that was an interesting. I don't know if there was any reason behind it other than that was just what he chose, or was there something prophetic? That was the thing I had looked for this week, was any prophetic ties to why Benjamin there with the cup.
Well, I mean, if we look at, if we remember, the conversation that was had, that was the one individual that he did not want to send with him. He's like, no, 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 don't take him with you.
Right.
Not that he doesn't love all of his sons, but I don't know. There's something about the youngest that's just kind of a thing amongst the patriarchs or whatever. You want to take care of them, want to protect them, that sort of thing. So, and the very son that that he didn't want to have to deal with issues or whatever, didn't want him to die or whatever. This is the one that's going to be taken now and held back. So, yeah.
Well, and I would say too with Joseph, the treatment he received from his brothers, being who he is and who his mother was, and the brothers knowing that his mother was favored. Rachel was favored. And so I think some of this is like he's testing us out to say, okay, do you really care about Benjamin? are you treating, or I mean, literally, because I think part of that test was when the steward, the steward stops him from making a, what do you call it? A vow. Because they say, hey, if any of us, whoever's in here, man, this, let him be, let's say, let me read this. It says in verse 5, behold, here we are in our sack searching. Wherever thou findest a cup in the sack of any man amongst us, let him be slain. So what's nice about this, the steward's like, no, we're not going that direction. So I'm gonna break that vow right now. We're not. This is not what we're gonna do. But what's gonna happen is this. And so through this testing, what we're seeing to the brothers is, hey, are they really going to care enough if their brother is taken away, or are they just going to go back home? Because the steward says you can go in peace. Hey, no, nothing else, no retribution to any of you guys. Hey, by the way, of course it's in Benjamin's sack, so they're all like, oh my gosh, we can't let this happen. So I think part of that test is Joseph's trying to see, hey, do you really care for your younger brother? Knowing that he was my brother and knowing that he was from the mom he came from. Or are you guys just going to be, oh, well, he said we can go in peace. So sorry, Benjamin, I guess you're going to be a servant to, Pharaoh's second in command the rest of your life. So I think this was a test, was to see where their hearts were with this situation. Because they can very easily, if in Joseph's heart, hey, maybe they're treating him like they treated me. And if I let them off the hook, basically, and then they roll out and go back home, that tells me right there exactly who they are and what they're all about.
Maybe. I think there is some significance to this, and I think you kind of we're hinting or hitting on a point there that's really important. Rachel had how many sons?
Two.
Joseph and Benjamin.
Yep.
Right. So, who is the woman that he wanted to marry?
Yeah, Rachel.
Right. So this is the lineage of the only wife that he asked for, the only wife that he was going for, which means this would be the only children that he was planning for, right? Like, so, because he wanted to, his plan was to be with Rachel and Rachel only. It ended up differently. So that lineage is what he's thinking. That's his thing. That's his main deal. That's right. So if Joseph is gone and now Benjamin is going to be gone in his eyes, like, not that his seed is wiped out, but that's what he sees as, I don't know, maybe the most important. I don't know. I'm not really sure how to phrase what I'm trying to say here, but that was the lineage that he was going for, right? When he was originally wanting to marry her. So I don't know. I just find that very interesting. So if Benjamin is gone, in his eyes, now everything that has come from his relationship with Rachel is wiped out. So no wonder it's such a big deal to him, right? So
Yeah, I can see that for sure, and I think it's interesting too how when the servant or the guy comes out and he's like, all right, let me check your sacks, let's see what you got. So he starts from the oldest and works his way down. So he's like, let me start with the most responsible, the one that should know better, and work my way down. Now, what's interesting about that is by the time he gets to Benjamin, the other brothers could have been like, hey, we're good. So he already checked our bags. Let's take our food back to dad and roll out. We got all the kids, the families, the wives, the servants. Like, there's a big need back home. And, I mean, we've already lost one. We let the other one stay for a little bit. Let's just head out. Like, we're all good. It was only Benjamin who made the mistake, and we'll deal with that later. But instead, they were all like, no, absolutely not. We're all in this together, whether it's baby brother or not. And they could have easily, like, after each one was good, they could have rolled out. All right, I'm good. All right, see you guys at home. Next one. All right, I'll see you guys at home. But they waited around and made sure that everybody was taken care of. No man left behind kind of deal. And it's just a very shows that shift in family dynamic. It shows that shift in priority. With Joseph, it was, hey, get out of here. Now it's with Benjamin, even though you actually did wrong, in their own eyes, of course, they didn't know any better. We're behind you no matter what. Even though you are technically guilty, you have committed the crime. It's family first now. So I think, the whole scenario with Joseph really was eye opening for Jacob and the rest of the kids, where it was, hey, whatever happened, but we don't do that. We don't live that way. We don't talk that way. Jacob probably gave them a good old scolding. If you ever get in a scenario where it's family first, if you ever get in a scenario where you get to, put your family up against anything else, it's family first every time. And you see that now playing out like in the fullness.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to note too, that they were brought back, right? Not just this wasn't just the steward going out and checking their bags out in the desert somewhere. He went and caught up with them. Was like, hey, y'all come back here with me for a minute, right? So they had this conversation with Joseph. So they're having to do this before him, and as it says in verse 8, they bowed themselves on their faces to the ground before him. So one, they're bowing to him. Got to point that out.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, then he tells them they've done evil and all that kind of good stuff, right? So yeah, I don't know why I thought that was important to point out, that they weren't just that they actually were brought back.
Well, yeah, and not only that, but you mentioned the part where they bowed down. That was very important for that prophecy. I think Joseph, he knows, but he doesn't know. It's kind of one of those weird things where it's, I know better and I know who this is, but what do I do? And so in Joseph's mind, there hasn't come a full fruition of the story yet until just this moment. Oh, they're all bowing before me. That was exactly what my dream was forever long ago. And Dad told me to kind of put it away, out of mind, pay it no attention because we don't talk like that. And he's like, oh, this is literally happening right now. And I think that's why you get that response from him where he's like, and Joe said to them, I too fear Yahuwah. This is the second time he's kind of hinted to them, but now he's like, okay, hey, by the way, me and you are on the same page. All this Egypt rod, blah 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 stuff. Hey, that's what they do. I fear Yahuwah. I fear the one true God. It's like I fear the one who can destroy the soul. I'm not worried about all the stuff going on over here, but I am here, and thank goodness because I'm taking care of you guys from afar, and you don't even know it.
There's something else I thought was neat too. If we go to Genesis 44:15, it says, "And Joseph said unto them, What deed is this that ye have done? What ye not that such a man as I could certainly divine?" And if you look over here on the side of this, it says, know ye not such a man as I can indeed divine. So I find this interesting that the Genesis account gives this idea, that he's saying that he can divine. Now, I don't know if there's anything more to that other than discernment or something else that it's implying. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
But the Jubilees version here is saying, "Know you not that a man delighteth in his cup, as I with this cup." Right? Like, I mean, think about it. We get set in our ways. Men like we got our chair, we got our favorite chair, we got our cup. I got a favorite cup. It's plastic, but I got a favorite cup. I just find that interesting. If y'all have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear it. But I never really caught that when we all the years that we've been reading through Genesis, the idea of him divining it. I've just I guess I've glossed over that, thinking that that's more of a discernment type thing and not divination. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't think it was divination.
I don't think it was. I'm just
Yeah.
referring to the words that were used there.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't think it was, but even with the wording, it's just a translation. So who knows what the original Hebrew word was there that kind of led in that direction. But you don't get any indication of Joseph doing any kind of off the beaten path type stuff.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, my only thought on that would be that when we've read it before in the Genesis account, is that that's part of his ruse still of him not revealing himself yet to his brothers. He's like, this is my cup of divination, where he's still playing the part, because remember, everything that he's doing right now is through an interpreter still.
Yeah.
So as we read through this chapter, he'll be surprise, he speaks Hebrew here in a minute to his brother. So I think that could be part of the ruse still, if that's the direction that it could go, one way or the other. That hey, because I mean, let's face it, Egypt is known for the magicians. It's known for all the gods. It's known for there's a lot of divination that's going on. So it just plays right into the role of who he is.
That's true.
And him not revealing himself, because again, they're looking dead at their brother and they don't recognize him at all. I guess it's about 13 years or so went by since they sold him off. So he's matured as a man. He looks like he's dressed like an Egyptian, looks like an Egyptian. I'm sure he smells like an Egyptian. So to them, he's an Egyptian guy. So it is interesting that in verse 10 that we just read that he says, I too fear Yahuwah. So he's already trying. I think already now he's kind of priming the pump a little bit for them. He says, "I too fear Yahuwah," and that's probably something they didn't expect to come out of his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
One of those little leave him a little nugget, right?
Yeah.
Leave him a little something.
Yeah, just a little something. So that's why I said when it goes back to when you read the Genesis account, if it was a cup of divination, I think it was still part of like they're probably going like, how does he know? Like, how does he know? All these different things. Hey, So anyway, I think that's part of that. Him making the fact that they do come back to me is big. I think that's huge for Joseph. Joseph's like, now I see your heart. When we go back to verse 8 there, Kyle, and it says right there, it says, and they rent their garments and laid it their donkeys and returned to the city and came to the house of Joseph, and they all bow themselves on their faces to the ground before him. So they go out there. This whole thing goes down. The steward shows up. I'm sure for all of them, they're like going, there is no way. In their minds, I think that's why that bold statement of, hey, and if there's any of us here, let that man be slain. Because I'm sure in their minds, they know for a fact, none of us kept the money. We didn't take the money back. None of us, we don't even know what your special cup looks like, probably. And so we know for a fact, none of us took it. And then again, that's surprise, but it was all a setup. And again, I do believe that was Joseph. Now, them all showing back up and bowing before Joseph. I think Joseph at this point, as we go through the stories, will be like, okay, now I'm seeing I'm seeing the true heart of my brothers in this situation. Because again, they could have very easily said, okay, Benjamin, it stinks to be you, brother, but like you said, Jonathan, we got family to feed, we got stuff to take care of, and I guess we'll deal with it later. No, they say, I don't care if you're letting us go scot-free. We're not leaving. You don't understand. We're not leaving without our little brother.
Right.
And I think that helps build up to the point of where we're getting ready to go into next with the story. So,
well, they also know what Daddy already said before they left.
Oh yeah, like we'd rather face Pharaoh than Dad.
All right, Joe, we'll get us going in 11, brother.
All right, guys. Let's pick it up in verse 11. And Judah said, O my Lord, let thy servant, I pray thee, speak a word in my Lord's ear. 2 brothers did thy servant's mother bear to our father. One went away and was lost, and has not been found, and he alone is left of his mother. And thy servant our father loveth him, and his life also is bound up with the life of this lad. And it will come to pass when we go to thy servant our father, and the lad is not with us, that he will die, and we shall bring down our father with sorrow unto death. Now rather let me thy servant abide instead of the boy, as a bondsman unto my Lord, and let the lad go with his brethren. For I became surety for him at the hand of the servant our father, and if I do not bring him back, thy servant will bear the blame to our father forever. And Joseph saw that they were all accordant in goodness one with another, and he could not refrain himself. And he told them that he was Joseph. And he conversed with them in the Hebrew tongue, and fell on their neck and wept. But they knew him not, and they began to weep. And he said unto them, Weep not over me, but hasten and bring my father to me. And ye see that it is my mouth that speaketh in the eyes of my brother Benjamin. See.
Okay.
All I know is it feels good. This is like whenever Abram finally got to be Abraham, and then when Abraham finally died, we had those moments where we've been going through this story and this narrative, and you're like, man, it's just such a buildup, and so we're at that same point here where it's like All right, they left, they came back, they brought the
Mhm.
honey and the random stuff, and they picked up sticks and, tar off a tree. They were just doing whatever they could to get their brother back. And then now it's like, all right, we're here. We've arrived. He said, I'm Joseph. From the time they put him in the pit until now, there's just so much that's happened. And, in Joseph's life, especially, we were, Joe's alluded to it a few times throughout the study of the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs. When you kind of go through, you really, really, really get the backstory of what's going on here. Like there's a lot here in Jubilees. There's a lot in Genesis, but there's a lot when you actually go through and read his, like, this was my daily life. Like, I was struggling. It was tough city out here, but I kept up what I was supposed to do. And then you see all the other brothers, like, with living in regret, living in shame, changing their ways, becoming better men. And then so this moment here is that crescendo, that you're like, oh man, yes, Joseph's Joseph and the brothers are the brothers, and they're talking about dad again. It's just like, it's that highlight moment for sure.
Yeah, I love too that they're still selling the story right up here in in verse 11. One went away and was lost and hath not been found. So they didn't say that he died, but they said he went away and was lost and hath not been found.
He just decided things weren't working out at home. He left one day. We don't know what happened. Just, no postcards or nothing from him. So
Exactly.
Hey, you know the rule: don't share more than you have to.
that's
We
right.
do have another brother. He's not with us right now. That's all you need to know.
We need you to feel sorry for us right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so bad out here.
And they're doubling down too in verse 12. When we go to our father, and Joe's favorite word, the lad, is not with us,
Mhm.
that he will die, and we shall bring down our father with sorrow unto death. So they fully know that that's going to happen. They truly believe that, hey, if we come back with bad news, daddy gonna die. This ain't
Mhm.
good. This is not good.
Well, and we got to remember too, like, the scene of this is, it's Joseph and the servant. Like Joe was saying, there's a translator going on the whole time. And then all the boys have already ripped their garments or whatever it was, when they found out. So they're standing there all disheveled. They're dirty from the trip. They got their bags. There's a random cup on the table that everybody's still looking at, like, but what's up with this cup? Like, I don't understand, Benjamin, what's the deal? And I'm sure they didn't have a conversation, but I'm sure they all threw each other eyes the whole time, like, hey, Benjamin, what's up, dude? Like, we're supposed to get this food and go to the house. Like, why did you steal the cup? And you never hear them kind of like admit, like, Joseph wasn't like, I gave it to you, haha. So this whole time they're definitely having this, like, there's just so many little microcosm conversations going on of, like, all right, well, we don't understand what's going on with Benjamin, but we got to go back. And then, okay, now we ripped our clothes, and now this guy's telling us he's Joseph. Like, and it said they didn't even believe him. They were like, okay, like, sure you are.
Right.
Right. We already told you he's lost. So who are you?
Well, I don't know that they ever mentioned the name of the brother, which is another thing, right? They just said our brother.
Yeah.
Backing up just a little bit in 14, it says, and Joseph saw that they were all accordant in goodness, one with another. So, he's testing them this whole time, and he could not refrain himself. He's like, all right, I can't do this any longer. That's just what an emotional moment. And you gotta recognize, like, these guys are probably freaking out. Like, they don't understand how this could have happened. They're not trying to play the blame game. They're not trying to put it on Benjamin or anything like that. They're even saying, look, we don't know how this could have happened, but let me take the blame for it. Look, this is a really, really big deal. So, and I guess his heart was just overwhelmed in the moment, as it should be. And yeah, I mean, can you imagine being that freaked out, and then all of a sudden, I'm just playing. I'm Joseph, man. Hey, and they're like, what? What? I would be a little confused myself. I don't know about you boys. But they knew him not and began to weep. I find that hilarious.
Yeah,
Right
it was
here.
like, we don't know who you are, but thanks.
Yeah, we're gonna cry anyway because I think we're gonna be okay. Oh man.
I think a better translation for that is they basically to say they didn't know who he was, and then they wept. I don't think they're weeping because they didn't know. I think it's just a bad way to write. But they knew him not, and they began to weep. I think they're weeping because they didn't recognize it before.
Oh, that does make sense.
Yeah, that's just the way that's written. That doesn't make any sense. Why, if I don't recognize who you are, why am I weeping for? And it's
That
like,
actually makes a lot of sense, Joe.
so I think the better way that should have been written was, and because they didn't know him beforehand, all of a sudden they're like, just like, that's the reason why we're giving the fact he's speaking Hebrew to them.
Right.
And whatever he said in Hebrew, he's probably backing it all up, like, you're so and so, you're so and so, you're so and so. He's telling them everybody who everybody is, who he was. I mean, there's part of this conversation we're not getting here. All it says he spoke Hebrew to him, and it didn't give us the actual conversation. So for them, they're like, this whole time, and we had no idea. Oh my gosh, and you're alive. It's like, and so anyway, that's why I think they began to weep, is because they didn't recognize their own brother this whole time.
And what an emotional moment. I mean, I know I kind of said that already, but good gracious. In 15 down here, he conversed with them in the Hebrew tongue and fell on their neck. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, that would be like the president or something like that getting so emotional about something that they're just boo-hoo and falling on the neck of some random person, some this is the distinction between this is king and peasant, right? And the king, and he's second in command, but this is the equivalent to a king falling on the neck of a peasant, and embracing them or whatever. This is a big deal. This is a big emotional moment. So I get the whole visual going on here. It's
Oh yeah, man, I could imagine.
Well, I think you see that a little bit because, again, when we go back and we look at his story from the day he was in the pit until right now in this moment, he said, "I'm going to be exactly who God told me to be. I'm going to stand 10 toes down. I'm not going to falter. I'm not going to fade. I'm going to hold myself to the highest standard possible." And this was the first time he was able to kind of just like not be
yeah,
that guy.
yeah,
He was like, for this singular moment, I don't have to be number 2 in command. I don't have to be in charge of the jail. I don't have to be in charge of Potiphar's house. I don't have to try to save everybody that I come in contact with. I don't have to try to run away from Potiphar's wife. I can just be with my family. Like this is your closest people. This is the people you grew up flicking boogers at. This is the people that you peed on the tree with. It's like he went. I think that's what that crying is he's going back to all the basic things of his life, all the things that brought him joy and brought him good memories. He's been under like 100% stress level from pit till now.
right.
Where he's like, I can't mess up. There cannot be 1 minute of me failing, or I fail the family, I fail myself. Yeah, exactly. So why does he collapse on their neck? He's like, I haven't been me. I've been a alter ego of myself, and I've had to keep that ruse. I've had to keep that
Guard
disguise
up.
almost. Yeah, I mean, 100%. There's he can't speak Hebrew to anybody. He can't talk about Yahuwah or God or his family is like, look who Abraham is. He's somebody famous. He's like, who's your dad? Don't worry about it. Aren't you somebody noble? No, I'm just a slave. Like from day one, he pretty not that he's lying. He has to protect his family because they find out your daddy's Abraham, your daddy's Jacob. Oh, okay, y'all got some stuff. Maybe we'll send the armies out and go get it. Especially whenever you have famines and stuff like that. So he's had to be just solo. Like I'm talking no congregation, no buddy, no pen pal, just him and the Father all day, every day. And he's finally around his friends and his brothers, and he's like, I love you guys, man. You don't know how bad I needed this.
Man, what an awesome, awesome thing to point out, Jonathan. We've got so many people that are in this walk that feel truly alone, trying to walk out righteousness, and having YouTube channels like ours, being able to come together in the live chats and things like that, and be with us on Shabbat, when you or Joe is doing the message for the vine or the Bible study that y'all do. It's awesome to be able to participate in something, especially when you feel like you're all alone, and man, what an amazing thing it's going to be when we can all come together in the kingdom. In the kingdom, when all the brothers and sisters come together in the kingdom, and we can finally Selah, we can finally just be at peace. Man, I bet there's going to be a lot of weeping, a lot of tears of joy during that moment too. I know there will be no more sorrow and all that, but You gotta imagine there's going to be some tears of joy.
Absolutely.
Little overwhelming, you know. So so to those out there struggling, being alone, being an army of one wherever you are, and it feels like the world is against you, be of good cheer. Keep the faith. You know, you're in good company, right?
Amen.
Don't
Good stuff.
stop believing.
You gonna sing it for us, Joe?
Nope. So one other thing I want to talk about before we move on to the rest of this chapter is the fact that Judah's the one that stands up and speaks out first. And you know, a couple chapters back, we had that break in the story, and as I've personally learned over the years, whenever there's a break in the story, there's got to be a good reason for it. And so we know that he loses two of his sons. You know, we know what happened between him and Tamar, his daughter-in-law, and all that stuff. So for me, when he goes to Jacob and says, "Hey, you know, I forgot which brother was it that said it would." Was it the oldest brother that said it? That he would take Benjamin, and the dad's like,
Yeah, if anything happens to Benjamin, then you can take
Right.
my own life. And you're like, no, we're not killing
No.
anybody.
No, he said he was offering his sons.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you see that with again that break in the store, I think is very important for multiple reasons. But I think one of the most important part of that is when Jacob knows everything that's going on in Judah's life also. So when Judah comes in and says, "Hey, look, basically man to man, I know how this feels to lose a son now. I've personally experienced this twice. So I promise you that I will be security for Benjamin. I will make sure that I will not leave him. I will bring, you know, so all this, you know, this is kind of this buildup here with Judah in his life and making mistakes. And now I think this is a part of a redemption for Judah. This is like, hey, Dad, I will take this on to myself. And we see that he is good to his word because he's the first one that speaks up to Joseph and says, look, I got to bring him back. I promised I would bring him back. I'm big brother looking over little brother, you know. And we see this, and again, we see this played out in history because Benjamin will always be where Judah's at. When the tribe split later on and all that stuff happens, you know, Benjamin's still with Judah. Judah's still being big brother to little brother. And so I think that's just something important to point out as we go through here that there's a reason why Judah's the one speaking up out of all the brothers. He's like, hey, I take full responsibility for this one, and I have to. If not, then take me instead. You know, I don't let this happen. So
Good stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you added that. That was one of the points I was going to bring up, but I wanted you to have it because that was the one you brought up earlier. So good stuff there. And then in 16, you know, it's interesting because he's like, all right, guys, all right. Even though Joseph was the one who initiated the weeping, now in 16, weep not over me. Don't worry about me. I've been doing what I'm supposed to do. You guys are the ones who've kind of been struggling. He's like, you've been dealing with the guilt and the shame this whole time. I didn't moved on. I dealt with it the way I needed to deal with it. Actually, I dealt with it so well. Look at where I'm at now. You know, and I don't think that's a look at me, I'm better than you. That's a all praise to the Most High. You know, like he's gotten me through the worst of times and the hardest of times. So don't weep over me. Like I'm fulfilling what God told me to do, and that was to be the sun, you know, with the sun, moon, and stars, and that was to be with the wheat and all the promises and the dreams. He's like, yeah, I'm good. Actually, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I'm in perfect alignment with His will right now. So don't weep over me. But at the same time, you better get Dad here ASAP. Do you know how much I miss Dad? You know, me and Dad had no problems. Me and you, me and these brothers. Oh yeah, we had some problems. You threw me in a pit. Yeah, so then he's like, "Yeah, guys, go get Dad." And remember, it. You know, he was looking at them, and he's like, "You guys, I all have a problem with. You guys and me, we've all kind of had our little tiff. We've had our moment. I sent you out. You came back. I kept the brother. You sent you back. You know, we've been dealing with each other this whole time, and you guys were dealt with me crazy back whenever we were younger and put me in the pit. Don't think I forgot about that stuff. But it's like after all that, he's like he weeps. He kind of gets over that initial moment. I think there's a big giant chunk of forgiveness, letting his guard down. But he says, "Hasten to get my dad. Go get Dad."
Mm-hmm.
Because one, it's dad that's been worried the whole time. It's dad that's sitting at home not knowing, but it's also dad that had that vision. I know you guys remember we talked about the tablets coming out of heaven where he got to see all things. And whether they were in like great detail or very high level, just blips on a map, it was Jacob's at home like, I know that it said 12 tribes, and I know that they're going to be the gates in the kingdom, and I know there's going to be some stuff going on, so I don't understand. And like it says, we're supposed to seek wisdom. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of all knowledge. So if we're going to have knowledge, if we're going to understand some stuff, Jacob's been at home stewing, in a positive way of like, I got this thing in the background. I just can't shake it. It's like that gut feeling. Something's up. So he's like, go get dad. And then, he says, but you see, this is me talking right now. This is even my brother can see what's going on. And I wonder if there's like, because we talked about him looking different, because of all the years that have passed. But I wonder if there's like hey, even Benjamin can see this. So I wonder if there's like some family resemblance. Because like you brought up earlier, Kyle, these are the only two kids that are 100% related. The rest are half brothers and sisters and stuff like that. But these are the only two that are same mom, same dad. So I wonder if there was some kind of like, yeah, even Benjamin can see because I look like him and he looks like me. Do you guys don't get it? Everybody else is, hairy, tall, skinny, whatever. He's like, but me and Benjamin, we're two peas in a pod. Like look at him, look at me. So I wonder if there was some of that kind of going on behind the scene too.
Maybe so.
And guys, I was just looking at Genesis 45. I kind of like to bring a little bit more context into the story to kind of. This is where there's actually more information with when Joseph reveals himself to his brothers, and in the emotional part of this, it says, "Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, 'Make everyone go out from me.' So no one stayed with me when Joseph made himself known to his brothers." And he wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it and the household of Pharaoh heard it. I mean, this is like, so what I really want to do is, as we're painting this story, or as Jubilees paints this story, this is where, again, these two stories from Genesis and Jubilees come together perfectly. And we get so much more of a picture of what's happening here, that it says he wept so loud that the Egyptians heard it and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." And they came near, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, or I'm sorry, he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and a lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry.'" So
that's some good context, and that actually gets into what we're right about to read now. So
yes, sir. Well, let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, verse 17, guys. "For behold, this is the second year of the famine, and there are still 5 years without harvest or fruit of trees or plowing. Come down quickly, ye and your household, so that ye perish not through the famine, and do not be grieved for your possessions. For Yahuwah sent me before you to set things in order, that many people might live. And tell my father that I am still alive, and ye behold, ye see that Yahuwah hath made me as a father to Pharaoh, and ruler over his house and over all the land of Egypt. And tell my father of all my glory and of all the riches and glory that Yahuwah has given me. And by the command of the mouth of Pharaoh, he gave them chariots and provisions for the way, and he gave them all many colored raiment and silver. And to their father he sent raiment and silver and 10 donkeys, which carried corn, and he sent them away. And they went up and told their father that Joseph was alive and was measuring out corn to all the nations of the earth, and that he was ruler over all the land of Egypt. And their father did not believe it, for he was beside himself in his mind. But when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent, the life of his spirit revived, and he said, "It is enough for me if Joseph liveth. I will go down and see him before I die."
Mm. Very cool. Yeah, so yeah, that brings all that together. I'm glad you read that Genesis account too. That was really good. So 5 years without harvest or fruit trees or plowing. So they got 5 more years left. Woo.
Well, what's crazy is, they we look at the situation as pretty dire. They had to go all the way to a foreign land, to a foreign government to get food. This is a bad day. They're struggling.
Right.
And I'm thinking, oh, okay, they're in the middle, they're getting toward the end. This is year 2. They're already scraping the bottom of the barrel and about to die in year 1. This is just now year 2, and they're like, hey man, if this didn't work out, I don't know what we were gonna do. It shows you, like, when we talked about earlier about like God ratcheting it up a little bit. He's like, y'all are gonna go to Egypt. I don't know how else to explain this to you. This is year 1, and they are struggling. They had no reserves. They had no backups. There was no, like, well, we got a couple cows in the back pasture. This is it. It's year 2. Do you think they're going to make it 5 more years on their own
Mhm.
power? And no, it's literally by every thing that God provides that they eat. It is by every moment that God shows up that they get to live. So he's like, in this moment, there is nothing. And you want to try to squeeze this out for a couple more years? Not going to happen. Impossible. So it's just, that detail really helps to like drive the point home of like, this was a famine. This wasn't a, well, some of the potatoes didn't make it, we'll just have to eat corn all year. It's like, oh
Right.
darn, well shoot, oh well, we'll figure it out. It was no, you're done. That's it.
And think about this too. This is wild to me. So you had 7 years of preparation that led up to this 7 years of famine, right? So
Mhm.
that means 7 years prior to, all of Egypt is preparing for this. And you got to know that with all the wheeling and dealing and bartering and everything that's been going on with all the surrounding nations, that word has to have gotten out to some of these places. Hey, Egypt is storing up grain because they say we're going to have 7 years of plenty, then 7 years of famine. I mean, it's not told to us here in the story, but I mean, you kind of have to imagine that they maybe caught wind of this somewhere down the lane, like there's this idea going around that there's going to be 7 years of famine. Can you imagine them? We serve the God of, you know, Abraham, Isaac, and me, like we don't, like we're not worried about that. If there was going to be a famine, y'all would have told me about it,
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah.
you know, and they weren't prepared, right? So they're having to depend on Egypt to take care of them, which I'm sure is the last thing they wanted to do, right?
Mhm.
A nation that they probably wanted nothing to do with, and now they're having to go to them for provision, and they're like, so Jacob's really got to be confused on this situation. Like, Yah provides and protects. I'm losing my sons left and right. We're in a famine. What is going on here? What did I do? So yeah, that's pretty wild. I have to imagine that they probably heard somewhere that this was going to be a thing, and they just was like, that's Egypt. They have their own gods. We're not going to listen to what their gods
Mhm.
say. So even in their faith, they were missing something that the Lord was doing for them. I find that very, very interesting.
Mhm.
Yep.
Hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up because it kind of segues into what I was going to say. That again, this is all God's plan. This is all Yahuwah's plan. And when you said that, I was like, yeah, exactly right. I'm sure Jacob, the word got out. Hey, Pharaoh had a dream, and one of the magicians interpreted it. Let's face it. When a story's told, it's going to change 20 times before it ever. By the time you get to way over here, it's going to be changed.
Right.
I'm sure. Oh yeah, one of his magicians or one of his sorcerers interpreted a dream of being 7 years of plenty and 7 years of bad. This gets back to Jacob, I'm sure, and the whole family. And they're all like, "Hey, Dad, what do you think about this?" And Jacob's kind of like, if this is going to happen, I'm sure y'all would let us know. We wouldn't be caught off guard. But at the same time, I think God did it perfectly like that so that Jacob would be off guard. Because in these scenarios, God's like, I'm going to have to get you to move from here to here.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not be, I'm not saying that he wouldn't be willing to go, but I'm going to make it so that you have to go. And so this whole scenario plays out. And again, we already know that Jacob he's been given the foresight of seeing all the generations. He saw the beginning and the end of all of them. He's like, he gets to see all this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when his son comes to him and says about everyone bowing down, again, it's written in the word that Jacob basically set these thoughts aside, like he pondered these thoughts, like, is this part of the plan? Then Joseph's gone. Is this part of the plan? Because I didn't see it. I mean, he's not, I don't think God completely told him everything, or he would have known for sure, hey,
right.
When everything went down, what was happening. And that's part of God's perfect plan. Is like, no, I'll let you know as soon as you need to know. And by the way, it's just like God to bring this whole thing the full story all the way back around, and the redemption, the reconciliation of the brothers. I mean, all this is taking place. And on top of that, God's like, not only is this going to take place, so I'm going to give you, Egypt's going to look at you because you're herdsmen and you're the lower people. But guess what? You're going to get the best land that's out there. And so all this is part of God's plan. Matter of fact, Jacob already knew that at some point that his people would be ruled by someone else for a matter of 400 plus years, right? So he already knows this is going to take place. And so all this, God orchestrates it perfectly. He's like, hey, you have no choice. Matter of fact, here's your son. Matter of fact, we're going to take care of you. As a matter of fact, we're going to bless you. As a matter of fact, you're going to have the greenest grass growing anywhere in Egypt, in Mitzrayim, and everything's going to be fine, Jacob. You're going to go sleep with your fathers as he was told. Everything's going to be fine. You will go to sleep with your fathers later in life and be at what? Peace.
Peace, absolutely. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, and it's interesting, when we look at Egypt, obviously it plays a role multiple times throughout Scripture, but we can see where God tells people to go where He places His name, and clearly Joseph was on Team God, Team Yahuwah. He was doing everything he was told to do, not because it was a good idea or because he read it in a book somewhere or anything like that. It was
You didn't watch a YouTube video?
exactly. It was God and Joseph having some conversations. Hey, I'm gonna let you interpret this dream. Remember, it's not you just doing it; it's me. But you're gonna be the vessel. You're gonna be a part of the story. You're gonna get to kind of be my hands and feet for this time period. And so, yeah, my name is gonna be here. And where do the people got to go? To where God's name is at. And we read that all throughout Scripture of go where God makes His name, and you're like, oh, that means Jerusalem. Oh, that means Israel. Does it?
Does it always?
Does it? I mean, let's be honest. Let's ask ourselves that question with a sober mind. Clearly, that's not always the case. Where did Abraham come from? Not Egypt. Not Israel. Not Jerusalem. He came from somewhere else.
Right.
Where did Noah land? He didn't land right smack dab on Temple Mount. He landed somewhere else. God very often puts people in positions where they're not comfortable, where they're not familiar with. But He says, "This is where I make my name known." So you're good to go because you're where I told you to be. And so, Joe, you hit the nail on the head. And that's why I keep bringing up that ratcheting. He's like, I'm going to make you do what I asked you to do. Now, I don't think it was so much a negative. It doesn't have to be like the way we think of like Jacob's getting a spanking.
Right.
It was, Jacob, I know you're a human and humans want to find safety and security and be at home. And I need you to do something different. And it's not that you did anything wrong. Jacob never gets scolded here. Jacob never looks like he's on the bad side of this equation. It's just, hey,
Right.
it's time for you to go. And that's okay. That is an okay thing for you to leave here to go there. Not to mention, it's not only just okay. You're going to get reunited with your son that you've been missing this whole time. You think I'm going to send you out with nothing? You think I'm going to send you to a place where you're going to lose? He's like, you're going to get your food, your supplies, your land. You're going to be covered for the rest of these 7 years that you thought you might have been able to make it, but you didn't. And you get your son back. What part of the story is not okay? Not only that, I'm going to send the chariots. You get to glide on the Pharaoh's chariots back down here. You don't have to walk. You don't have to get on those donkeys. You don't have to do nothing hard. This is the road is paved for you. It's time to go.
Well, think about this, Jonathan. This is like the best retirement plan for Jacob. You know, seriously, you're
Yeah.
not. He's not on death's doorstep yet. Doorstep yet. He's got some time left in him. As a matter of fact, it says here he was revived. I think in his heart he'd been broken for so long. He was kind of like, if Benjamin doesn't come back, I just send me the shield. Just go ahead and let me die. But all of a sudden you're like, oh, not only is Benjamin okay, not only is everything gonna be okay, but my son is alive. Joseph is alive. All of a sudden, this guy probably gained 20 years back like that. He was like, hey, where's the chariot at? I'm ready to roll.
Right.
No, don't worry about that bag over there. Just leave it. We don't need it anyway. Just let's go. So what an awesome retirement plan for Jacob, though. For me, it's like, again, this isn't like any punishment. God's like, man, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to bring healing where healing needs to come. And by the way, I'm going to give you the best land. You're going to live the best part of your life. The rest of your life is going to be lived out here, and it's going to be good. Matter of fact, you have favor with Pharaoh. When we read through the Genesis account, we see that Pharaoh, because of the favor of Joseph, that favor flows over to not only to his father, but all his brothers too. He's like, hey, all y'all get to have the best of everything here. And as long as Pharaoh was alive and Joseph was alive, it was all good. It was Tov.
That's a really interesting thought for us to apply to our lives. It's sometimes easy to think about the things that we do without. First world problems, right? Our electricity went out because of a storm. We got to deal with that for a couple of days. First world problems, right? And we think about a lot of these daily issues that we deal with as being trials and tribulations that aren't really trials and tribulations when you compare it to what we see in Scripture. It's not quite on that same level. But even still, the question gets often asked, about why does it seem that evil people get so blessed? And I don't see that as the case at all. I think I see that as during the times of famine, that's when the Father gets to show off. During the times of famine, that's when I'm going to really bless my people. That's when everybody is going to look at you, right? And I think that's really cool. And adding on to that blessing part, in verse 20, it says, and tell my Father of all my glory and all the riches and glory that Yahweh hath given me. And I don't think we need to overlook that statement there, because not once do we ever have an example of him chasing the dollar, right? He's not chasing riches, he's chasing righteousness. And because he chased righteousness, Yahweh gives him all the riches, right? And I think that's just really cool. There's so many, not just the prosperity teachers out there, but there's so many people that aren't even part of the prosperity group that have this deep-rooted belief that you're supposed to be blessed with an abundant life just by being a believer and being a good person, right? And that's not necessarily the case. If we're chasing riches, even if we are doing it in part, right? That's that hot or cold, right? I'd rather you be hot or cold, but not lukewarm. It's kind of like, I'm serving you, but hey, I got to feed my family. We got to work, but what are we working for? Are we working to put the brand new wheels on the truck, or are we working to take care of our family and take care of others? What are we working for? So I think there's a lot that can be said in that. And I think we can probably dig into that a whole lot more down the road too. But all of his glory and all of his riches was that Yahweh gave him, not anything that he ever personally worked for. And I find that to be pretty important.
Yeah, I'll just back that up real quick with a verse out of Matthew 6:33. It says in the ESV, it says, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. And I don't want people to think, well, that means if we seek God, then we automatically get riches. No, It's it's whatever the Father blesses. He is his desire to bless you, his desire to give you the things of life. And again, I've said this many times, and I always say it: I'll take healing of cancer for a loved one or myself over money any day of the week.
Amen.
I'll take having a roof over my head and warm food on the table every afternoon than all the riches in the world. You know, there's a proverb, I believe, it talks about don't give me too much lest I forget.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes like, oh, look how blessed I am, but then we forget who is doing the blessing.
Yep.
Right.
You know, don't give me too little so that I resent you.
Mhm.
So, you know, there's some wisdoms in those proverbs. So
Yeah.
So yeah, what's really interesting when I was looking at it is like how there's a few loops that are closed here, a few prophetic moments, and at first reading through it, they don't jump off the page, at least not to me. But the first one was in verse 21, and it says that he gave them chariots and provisions, and he gave them all many colored raiment. And I thought that was very interesting because what was it that Joseph had that he was given by his father? Multicolored coat, multicolored raiment. And so, when you see that, it's kind of a little bit of a nod, like, hey, by the way, guys, don't think I forgot. Now,
Everybody gets a coat. You get a coat, and you
yeah,
get a coat.
and what you devise for evil, God will devise for good, right? He'll turn all things around. So I think this is, whenever you see Joseph acting this way, it's like he's really taking some of the characteristics of the father. He's like, you took my coat off, you dipped it in blood, you ripped it, you made it look like I got chewed up by an animal. Come on, I know. And dad's been sitting at home with this bloody coat, probably in the corner, like, man, this is crazy. Yet whenever they get ready to make their trip down, again, dad still hasn't seen him. Hey, what's up with all these multicolored coats? He's like, this looks oddly familiar. I remember this. Now, I'm not saying that's what it was. It could have been Egyptian style and just colors of that land. But it was just interesting to use that same kind of language and that same word as like a wrap up moment of it started with a coat and it's ending with a coat. And they're both multicolored. Let's just play out a little bit. It's fun for the mind. It'd be cool if it was in a movie and it was like the exact same one. He's like, hey, I've had these waiting this whole time. I had 11 built. One of them was extra large, one of them was small, but don't worry about it. They're all ready to go. So I thought that was definitely a funny kind of like little nod back to the story. And then there at the very end, in verse 24, all the way at the bottom right corner, it says, the life of his spirit revived, and he said, it is enough for me if Joseph liveth. Now I'm sure he didn't use the king's language and say liveth, but it's enough for me. Like, I don't need to have Goshen. I don't need to have all the food. We don't need to be blessed beyond measure. The fact that my son's still alive, that's really what does it for me. And again, when we talk about having the heart of the Father, having the same spirit as the Father, these are the things that he's looking for from us. Do we take care of the people first? Are we more prepared to make sure that the eternal souls that are on the earth make it to their final destination, the good one, right? The one that's going to last for eternity, where we spend it with him in the kingdom. That's the one that matters. And I think here Jacob's like, it's enough, man. And that's probably all he could even say. That's probably all the words that he could get out of his mouth was, it's just enough that my son's alive. I don't even the chariots and the coats and the silver. He's like, I can't even see that right now. My eyes can't even recognize what's in front of me because my son lives. And so the last part of that, what's just that ultimate tie-in is when we talk about Yeshua. He's Yeshua ben David, Yeshua ben Joseph. It's enough that he lives. And then we go back to with Yeshua died, resurrected. It's enough that he lives. This whole story, none of this stuff works. None of us are on the camera nodding our heads right now. It's because Yeshua lives. He's up on the throne right now as our high priest. It's enough that he lives. And that is all I got for you guys.
Wow. Amen. And with that, we will see you next time. Woo. That got me, dude. Woo. And with that, we will see you next time for chapter 44 in the book of Jubilees. God bless.
Shalom.
Ciao.